The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Sunday, the 25th of May, 2025, and welcome to This Week with Mary Holland and myself, Polly Tommey. And we have a busy week. My goodness, Mary, I can hardly keep up.
Very busy, Polly.
Okay, well, let's just start. I'm going to run through a few articles and then we'll have Mary, who has been in the thick of it. We will talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
We start with stat news. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. declared war on chronic disease. First comes the battle over priorities. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. faces a White House deadline this week. His Make America Healthy Again Commission must deliver a diagnosis of the nation's epidemic of chronic disease. By the summer's end, it will need to offer solutions. And then Stat does a big dive on that. Then we go to ABC News. White House releases RFK Jr.'s led report on chronic disease. The report blames chronic illness on things such as ultra-processed foods, chemicals in the environment, sedentary behavior, and over-reliance on digital devices amongst children. It also suggests that childhood vaccines need to be studied further. Then the best article on all of this, as always, in The Defender, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s MAHA report, a clarion call to end the chronic disease epidemic. The 73-page Making Our Children Healthy Again report was presented at the White House by President Donald Trump and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and also key members of the Trump administration and health freedom activists from the MAHA movement. Kennedy called it the diagnosis and said the prescription will follow in 100 days. Mary, you were there. Tell us everything.
I was there. I'm still in Washington, D.C., Polly. I have to say, it was an exciting couple days in Washington, D.C. We'll talk about the hearing from Ron Johnson, but this was the MAHA Commission 100-day report, which was an assessment of what is going wrong with chronic disease, especially for children. And it was a thrill to be there, Polly. Our agenda, Children's Health Defense's agenda, is now the agenda of the President of the United States and the Secretary of Health and Human Services and most of the members of the cabinet. The Labor Secretary was there, Environmental Protection Agency was there, Agriculture was there, Office of Management and Budget was there. The FDA heads, the CMS and NIH heads were all there. It was incredible, Polly. It was really incredible to be there. And one of the things that was most exciting was to see the kind of real mutual respect of these people who have been working really hard. Bobby Kennedy, Secretary Kennedy, said many times, we stayed up late into the night to get these things done. These people worked really hard with me. And there were some hard fought battles. It was a negotiated document. And it's not everything we would want, Polly, but it never is in a negotiation. But it's exciting. It really feels to me, Polly, like it's a new day. There's so much work to do, but we are at the starting gate now. It took us literally over 20 years to get, maybe 50 years to get to the starting gate. But now our agenda is the government's agenda. And as Bobby Kennedy said, there's really nothing that should separate a good public health policy from a good industrial policy, from a good economic policy, from a good future policy, make America great again policy. So it was inspiring, Polly. And I want to point, I agree with you, our article in Defender, the Clarion Call, is such a good article that has a link to the actual report in it. And it includes polling data, Polly. And the polling data from USA Today says that 88% of Americans think that we should be able to hold the pharmaceutical industry accountable for harms from vaccines and medicines. That's incredible, because remember, we have this statute that makes them not liable. It also says that 50% of people believe that parents should have opt-out rights on childhood vaccines. And on 22 of 23 questions from the MAHA agenda, Make America Healthy Again, 68% agree on the MAHA agenda. This is just staggering, Polly. This is just staggering that the world has caught up to what Bobby Kennedy and Children's Health Defense have been saying for decades.
Now, you were there interviewing people as well, because I saw the reel of you doing
Yes.
that. And what was the atmosphere like amongst the normal people?
Well, I was interviewing people, Polly, before the Ron Johnson hearing on corruption and the COVID shots and myocarditis. And those were normal people. And that was really exciting too, to start to get to the bottom of COVID. And some people are seeing MAHA as separate from COVID. I have to say, I don't see them as separate at all. They're part of one agenda. And for sure, what was so horrific in COVID was the result of decades of ignoring the harms from vaccines, from environmental pollutants, from pesticides, from fertilizers and fluoride byproducts for decades. So to me, the COVID horrors and what some would characterize as COVID genocide is the result of the failure to keep the population healthy. So I don't see them as separate and one is like a distraction from the other. I see them as absolutely inextricably linked. And I see Senator Johnson and Bobby Kennedy as really working together on these issues.
I think that sometimes the people get a little confused. There's so much going on so fast at the moment, different hearings and different things and different streams that it can be confusing.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's all going in the right direction.
It is going in the right direction, Polly. It was really exciting to be here in DC.
Well, Michael Nevadarkis here in The Defender. We need to reboot the whole system. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. addresses the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made a surprise video appearance at the World Health Organization's 78th World Health Assembly, one day after member states reached a deal on the pandemic agreement and months after President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Global Health Agency, and we're so grateful that we are withdrawn from that.
We are. This is a fantastic 6-minute video. I highly recommend that people watch this 6-minute video of Secretary Kennedy saying why we left the WHO, because it's a bloated bureaucracy, because there's conflicts of interest, because it's engaged in international power politics, because it has not reckoned with the lessons from COVID, where the WHO was an abject failure. It's a fantastic short video. And he says President Trump and he are all in favor of global health and efficient, transparent cooperation, but that's not going to be through the WHO. And at the conclusion, he asked for people to pray for the health of our children and grandchildren. So it's a very moving short video that really says why we left the WHO, and it's for very good reasons.
Excellent. Okay, Suzanne Burdick here in The Defender. This is going to be a slog. The Senate hearing on cover-up of COVID vaccine risks, just the tip of the iceberg, Johnson tells committee. Wednesday's hearing by the U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on investigations on evidence of a cover-up by public health officials of the extent of the risks associated with COVID-19 shots was the first of many to come, said Senator Ron Johnson. He's chair of the committee.
Yes, he's chair of this subcommittee in the Senate on investigations. And this is a start, Polly. It's not the end. It's just the start. But there were 5 really outstanding speakers who testified about the harms from COVID. Governor Green also testified, a physician from Hawaii. He was justifying what happened during COVID. The ranking member, Senator Blumenthal, also tried to justify the COVID injections and justify the measures. They weren't very effective, frankly, Polly. One of the most disappointing things about that hearing was that only Senator Johnson was there for the whole thing. Senator Blumenthal, the ranking member, was there for most of it. The other senators, for the most part, just made mini appearances. 2 of them didn't show up at all. They obviously don't really get how outraged the American public is about what happened during COVID. And I think that is going to have to be conveyed more forcefully. But Dr. McCullough, Aaron Seery, Dr. Walskog, these people gave great testimony, and it's a great start. And the report is a great start that came from the subcommittee.
It was fascinating to watch, and also it reached so many people. We streamed it on CHD TV, but it was frustrating. It was about COVID shots, and then suddenly they start talking about measles, and suddenly there's this big placard behind Senator Ron Johnson that says 3 measles deaths. And I so wanted to cross that out.
I know, me too.
No, they didn't die.
No, it's the propaganda. But Polly, that was what was so fascinating is immediately Senator Blumenthal starts talking about misinformation. And Dr. McCullough, to his credit, says that is a communist propaganda term. Misinformation is not a term to be used in a democracy with free speech. So that was great that it was pushed back on. And yeah, I think Senator Johnson tried to bring it back several times. This was not about measles. This was not about the whole vaccine program. Senator Moreno kind of said that we're not talking about the whole vaccine program here. We're talking about COVID. And Senator Moreno really gave Dr. Green a really hard time. It was a beginning, Polly. It's definitely not where we need to get to, but it was really great to see this on the record. This was an official hearing. Senator Johnson called these people, and it's just the start of many more hearings.
And the Josh Green saying that Children's Health Defense went down to the Mennonite community to spread fear.
Yeah, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, Dr. Green, I told you, Polly, I did go and shake hands with Governor Green afterwards. I gave him my card. I said, I'm the president of Children's Health Defense. I would like to talk to him. And so we'll see what comes of that.
Go, Mary. But anyway, well done for all of that. And to Senator Johnson, I mean, quite frankly, we've never had anything like this. We must have.
Polly, I wish that there were 100 Senator Johnsons in the Senate. There's not. There's one. And this gentleman really cares about the people who've been injured by false information from the government to go get vaccines that did not prevent transmission. So, kudos to Senator Johnson. He is really devoted to the people who've been injured. And afterwards, it's not in our articles, Polly, but we went to go see a screening at the visitor center at the Capitol of Follow the Silence. And I have to say that focuses on the people who've been injured during COVID. And it's a very moving film, and especially for people who have no idea about vaccine injury and they just think that the shots were fantastic and they prevented, millions of deaths. It's a great film to send them.
Let's go back to the Defender with Michael Nevadakis. Quite a lot on the FDA in today's show. The FDA announces radical framework for overhauling vaccine approval process. The FDA is preparing to issue new guidance for vaccine manufacturers in the coming days as part of a new radical framework. Drug safety advocate Kim Witchcock, who called the news encouraging, said the fact that this is even being acknowledged is a major step forward, but the real test will be in the details.
Yeah, it doesn't look quite as radical as we'd like, Polly. And there's some real criticism of an article that Doctors Prasad and Makari just came out with, but at least they are seriously talking about stopping the recommendations of the COVID shots for kids and for pregnant women. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful, Polly. We've been saying that for years.
Mary, a few years ago when we were doing the show, it was all bad news from the FDA. Well, listen, viewers, as we continue.
Polly, I shook hands last evening after the commission report with Commissioner Makari of the FDA, who thanked me for the work of Children's Health Defense. I mean, we're in such a different world now. It is really fantastic.
Unbelievable. And it's thanks to you, the viewers, who make Children's Health
It
Defense
is thanks
possible.
to you, the viewers, who make CHD what it is. 100%. We can't do this without your help.
We're one
We're
big
so
family.
grateful.
Yeah. All right. Well, so this headline from Brenda Belletti in the Defender: Pfizer and Moderna must add stronger warnings about possible heart damage from COVID vaccines. FDA says the vaccine makers must expand this information about the age groups at risk and warn that myocardial damage has commonly been long-lasting among those who suffer vaccine-related myocarditis. The FDA says this is coming straight from the FDA again. When did we ever hear such a thing?
Right. It's a start.
The only thing is with that, and it's a brilliant start, but the parents don't get to see what's on the warning labels of these things. They just get this doctor saying it's safe and effective. Here we go. So we've really got to keep fighting for that informed consent for those poor young parents that just have no idea. Back in the Defender, kids and teens who got the COVID shots had 23% higher risk of autoimmune disease. The Israeli authors of a peer-reviewed study published in Pediatric Rheumatology said their findings warrant further research to understand the long-term effects of COVID-19 vaccines in children. So just more of the same thing.
Oh, this is horrifying, though. It says also that children who got COVID had no elevated risk of autoimmune disorder. So the people who got the COVID shots are severely compromised from having gotten them. This is horrible. And this is just a couple of years out. We have no idea what the longer term effects are going to be. It's horrible. And this was based on almost 500,000 children in Israel.
And we know Israel probably took more shots than any other. I mean, they really went for it. Brenda Belletti in The Defender. FDA to limit approvals of new COVID vaccines to elderly and high-risk groups, but hundreds of millions still eligible for the shots. The decision marks a shift in the FDA's approach to the vaccines, which the agency previously approved for everyone 12 years and older, and under emergency use authorization for babies and children aged 6 months to 11 years. The new framework doesn't completely take COVID-19 vaccines off the table for healthy adults and children, but does require new clinical trials for these groups. Some people might think that's disappointing, Mary.
It is disappointing, Polly. We believe, as so many others in our space do, that these mRNA shots should be taken off the market. They are not safe. They are inherently dangerous. They cause autoimmune disorders. So I'm not happy about it that it's still eligible, but it certainly is paving the way to virtually no uptake, Polly. And so it's a step in the right direction. It's not, we haven't gotten to the destination.
Suzanne Burdick in The Defender. Senate report exposes how federal health officials downplayed COVID vaccine risks and failed to warn the public. The report by the US Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations reveals previously redacted information from government records recently obtained by subpoena and early requests under the Freedom of Information Act. Yes, they did downplay. I'm kidding.
So this was work that our own Brian Hooker and Carl Yablonowski did that showed that the government knew 3 months before they told anybody in the public that these shots were causing heart damage to young men. And I was so proud that Senator Johnson specifically in his report, subcommittee report, and at the hearing called out Brian Hooker and Brenda Belletti of our CHD staff for their wonderful work in uncovering this government corruption and these lies. So kudos to our team. It's an amazing team, as you know, Polly.
It is an amazing team. Very proud of Children's Health Defense. Moderna pulls application for FDA approval of the flu COVID shot after the FDA calls for new clinical trials. Moderna's decision to withdraw its application at this time is the latest sign of increased regulatory scrutiny of the vaccine approval process since Robert F. Kennedy Jr. took the top US health job earlier this year. FDA at it again, and Bobby.
Polly, remember we talked about Flurona. That was what they were calling this double jab. And it looks like these pharmaceutical companies making vaccines are not doing well with their revenue streams, which is great.
This is a joint article, Brenda Belletti and Suzanne Burdick together in The Defender. FDA vaccine advisors vote on new COVID vaccine formula amid calls to pull shots from the market. Advisors unanimously recommended the 2025 and 2026 COVID-19 boosters target the JN1 strain of the virus, the same variant as last year. They said the formula improves protection for people with prior immunity for 3 to 4 months.
Yes, disappointing. Dr. Nass, who live blogged the VRBAC meeting for us on CHD TV, said there was not a single presentation mentioning safety data, which was unacceptable. I am grateful that our Chief Science Officer, Brian Hooker, testified at this hearing, and he said there have been 19,400 recorded deaths in the VAERS system. Back in the day when the swine flu vaccine caused 50 deaths, they pulled the vaccine. He said, "What are you waiting for?" And I'm so grateful for him to get that message to the people at the FDA.
And they are FDA vaccine advisors. So they're not the people that make the actual decision.
True. But the VRBAC committee is very, historically has been listened to. But you're right, Polly, they could be overridden.
Thank goodness for that. Okay, Michael Nevadakis in The Defender. FDA to tighten review process for chemicals in food. Some of the chemicals subject to review include BHT and BHA, used as preservatives, ADA, a foaming agents added to sandwiches. That is disgusting. Whoever knew a foaming agent was added to sandwiches? And then it goes on about other preservatives, titanium dioxide. These and other chemicals have been linked to reproductive harms, hormone disruption, and cancer. Well, we all know that there's a massive fertility issue. We know that vaccines play a potential part in that. But there's also the food. I mean, foaming agents in sandwiches.
Polly, these things are poisons. I am so grateful that Bobby Kennedy is calling attention to this. Nobody wants to have poisons in their food. Nobody. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's good for companies to preserve foods longer so that they can make more money with making the same products, but it's not good. It's just not good.
No, it's not. Okay, right. Well, let's go to the UK. This is the Daily Mail reporting here. More than 200,000 people are now waiting for an autism assessment in England, with some having been on the list for years. Alarming National Health Service, which is known as the NHS, data shows. In total, nearly 124,000 under 18-year-olds were on the waiting list for over 3 months, an increase of almost 30,000 compared to last year. Big problem worldwide.
Big problem, Polly. But fortunately, it's on the agenda for the MAHA Commission. And come September, they will be telling us what their assessment is of what are the drivers of the autism epidemic. It is absolutely a worldwide epidemic, particularly in the UK.
So when we announce the findings, the UK have to listen. Canada has to listen.
The whole world is watching what Bobby Kennedy is doing as HHS secretary. Whole world.
It's been such a long time coming, this, has it not?
It's been too long for our children. It's been cruel. It's been cruel. It's been a cruel, long wait, but here we are. We have to take hope and take stock of where we are.
All right. Well, hugely sad story here. Suzanne Burdick in The Defender, 6-month-old died after receiving 6 routine vaccines at wellness visit. This is Blessings Miracle Jean Simmons. She received the DTaP, the inactivated poliovirus, the Hib, the rotavirus, the pneumococcal, and the third Hep B. She received 2 shots in each leg. The other 2 vaccines were given orally. Then she had Tylenol, and the next morning she was lifeless. And we did cover this story, but I'm so grateful to Suzanne Burdick for putting that together so beautifully.
It's so tragic, Polly. It's so awful. This baby was in perfect health, according to her mother. Not only did the baby get these shots, but then the doctors recommended that the baby get Tylenol, which we know makes the situation even worse. And the next morning, the baby was dead. These are quote unquote routine vaccinations. And needless to say, the parents are devastated. They say words can't describe their grief. They already have a 4-year-old son who's been diagnosed with autism at age 2. So it's just a tragic situation. And we know that, vaccines are at the heart of that one.
Yeah, really lovely parents as well. So do the link to the interviews in there, and Suzanne's done this perfect write-up on it. So if you or know anybody or ever want to talk about any deaths or any vaccine injuries, do contact us at chd.tv or The Defender. Either we work as a team and we will get your stories out. Okay, well, MedPage Today admits mumps vaccine doesn't work. Shrugs off Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s concerns by blaming his law career. So MedPage Today confirmed that HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s statements that mumps vaccines aren't very effective and that Merck committed fraud to cover up the vaccine's law's efficacy rates are true. However, the outlet claimed Kennedy publicly criticized the vaccine only because of his history as a personal injury lawyer. That's so stupid.
It's outrageous, Polly. It's, Paul Offit, if that's your best excuse for why it's okay to give totally ineffective vaccines to children, you should hang it up and let somebody else take your place. It's outrageous, Polly. It's just outrageous. They're trying to denigrate Bobby Kennedy, but they're acknowledging at the same time that he and Andrew Wakefield and the lawyers who represented Steve Kraling and the other woman were telling the truth. The mumps component doesn't work, and that's still on the market, Polly. It's incredible.
Okay, Brenda Belletti in The Defender. This is a great story. It's Max's story. What happens when water fluoridation goes wrong? In 2019, 5th grader Max Weidminer was poisoned when a malfunctioning pump in Sandy, Utah, released undiluted hydrofluorosilicic acid into the water, affecting 1,500 households, institutions, and businesses, and sickening over 200 people. It turns out fluoridation accidents happen frequently, and the public is often the last to know. We're really getting somewhere with this fluoride situation.
All right. So this is fascinating, Polly. This young man, he's now 17. He testified in the Utah legislature, and Utah was the first state to take fluoride out of its water, to ban it statewide. And it sounds like he gave incredibly compelling testimony. He said that the fluoride that he got was at 40 times the acceptable level, and that with the officials didn't notify people for 10 days that there had been this leak. And what happened to this boy within a day of drinking this glass of water that he had told his mother tasted metallic is he got a fever, he got tics, he lost speech, and he had gastrointestinal symptoms. All the things that we know go along with autism. And he literally regressed to the state of being about a 2-year-old in his functioning. Thank God the mom, Maham, figures out that he needs to be on a strict diet and he needs to have chelation to get rid of the heavy metals, because the fluoride then attracted all these heavy metals. So the boy was very high in various heavy metals, and he's now back to normal cognitively, but he still has serious residual problems with tics, with balance, and with his handwriting, which is very poor. So it's just a clear example of this toxic environmental exposure causing neurological harm, just like what we've been talking about for decades about autism.
Yeah, Mary, on Wednesday we had Lisa Leahy on the show, and she was talking about the fluoride varnish and that they paste on these babies 6 months and with do not swallow. Well, how does a 6-month-old baby know not to swallow? And they've got hardly no teeth, and that it's going down. So she did a great warning to parents about knowing, because they don't tell you they're going to do it. They just varnish it on like they do when they give the shots, and we don't know what they're giving. So it was a really good informed consent and warning to the parents that they are doing this in pediatric offices as well as dentists, just layering on the fluoride. Not good. US Right to Know in the Defender: could these tiny particles in your kids' food be messing with their blood sugar? The tiniest particles of titanium dioxide, commonly used to make candles, cookies, and other ultra-processed foods look brighter and more visually appealing, especially to kids, can raise your blood sugar levels and impair how the body processes glucose, among other health harms, according to this new research that they've done in mice. Who knew this stuff was in there? I didn't.
The good news is I think the FDA is on top of this now. I think they really are going after these chemicals and taking them out of the food supply.
Excellent. Okay, well, Suzanne Burdick in the Defender here: telecom industry is not required to accommodate people sickened by cell tower radiation, courts rule. Wireless companies do not have to make accommodations or changes to their practices or policies under the Americans with Disabilities Act when their towers make people living nearby sick, even in their homes, a panel of judges ruled.
So this is very important. We have at Children's Health Defense been funding this litigation around electromagnetic radiation for 6 years. And what we've established, especially in this case, is that really there is no legal remedy. Once a tower has been put up, it's called federal preemption. Federal law says telecom gets to do what it wants once it's there, and that local laws can't prevent it. And so this man literally has had 15 episodes of atrial fibrillation since they installed a Verizon tower right next to his home in Idaho. And he moved to Idaho, Polly, specifically to get away from wireless radiation in California. So this is an incredible story. And as the lead attorney on this, Scott McCullough, says, this is literally terrible. And this is why we are backing something called 704 No More. That is Section 704 from the 1996 Telecommunications Act that says that federal law allows cell towers, once they're in place, to do whatever they want. We also still have one more challenge in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals that possibly might go the other way, which would then probably open up a path to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. The 8th Circuit case is about a woman in Minnesota who had 50 strokes after they installed an AT&T tower near her home. So, this is a really serious issue, especially as we're now moving from 4G to 5G to 6G to 7G. This is a really damaging technology for some people in some ways. And so I'm very proud that Children's Health Defense is way ahead of the curve on this toxic exposure. And we're calling it out, and we're proposing a challenge to this legislation.
Yeah, very, very good work from our EMR team as well. Well, now we have a couple of open positions at Children's Health Defense. If you'd like to come work with us, we'd love to have you. The EMR department, which we've just talked about, they're looking for a social media intern. So the link to that application will be in the show notes. And the Defender are looking for an associate editor and a Washington, D.C. reporter, Mary. It's very important.
Very
You have
important.
to live in Washington, D.C.
It's very important. Yes, you need to live in the Washington area so that you can get to these various hearings, you can get to these commission meetings and so on. We need someone here in DC all the time, not just me going back and forth, to be able to cover these things.
Yeah, so the applications for those that are in there, so do apply or send to someone you know that might be perfect for that job. And also want to say that DHD TV have been working so hard on the Simpson Wood. On June the 6th, we're just going to post here in the show notes. If you can sign up, just put your email address and we'll just let you know when we're live. It's all day on June the 6th. And it's really brilliant and really important. This is history. All homeschools need to listen to this.
Yeah, so much of the movement around trying to make vaccines safer, or just to bring awareness to the problems with vaccines, especially autism, it started out of Simpsonwood, Polly. It was parents like Lynn Redwood and Elizabeth Burt and Laura Bono and Mark Blaxell who took that information from a Freedom of Information Act around Simpsonwood and understood how serious it was. And then it was Bobby Kennedy writing an article about it in 2007 that made him the pariah that he was for almost 20 years. But Simpsonwood is now front and center, and Bobby Kennedy is our Secretary of Health and Human Services. So we almost couldn't have imagined that this is where the Simpsonwood story would lead. But Bobby Kennedy being at HHS is a direct result of his writing about Simpsonwood. So I strongly urge people to tune in on June 6th. It's going to be really
June
important.
6th, all day, pretty much on CHD TV.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to chat with the live chat will be up. You'll be able to talk with each other. So get ready for that day. Take a day off work and join the team and learn, because as Mary said, this is important. So anyway, June the 6th. Okay, so now we're going to have our story. This is 2 days after his COVID shot. Bob was found dead from heart failure. This is his stepbrother Arthur sharing the story. We're going to continue to talk about deaths following vaccines throughout the whole of May. We could go on forever, to be honest with you. It's so tragic. But onwards we fight. Good things are happening. We are getting there. Even if it's not as quick as we want it to be, it's still better than we ever could have dreamed.
Right.
So pray big, my friends, stand firm, never settle. And we're going to play the story, and we're going to have our geoengineering report as well. So all of that coming up after this. Yeah, we're live. Can you tell us your name, please?
My name is Arthur Orlov.
And this is a story about your brother, your
This
stepbrother.
is my stepbrother, Robert Weeks Jr.
Okay, and so younger than you.
Actually, he's older than me.
Okay.
But the family's close. And he received a shot for COVID on Friday. And
His first shot?
his first shot. And was found dead on Sunday. It was from heart failure, but they wouldn't allow for an autopsy. And so I can't specifically say that it was a result of the shot, but you get a shot on Friday and you die of heart failure sometime between Friday and Sunday.
Did your stepbrother have any heart issues before that you knew of?
He did have issues with his heart, but it was under control, and he was doing fine as far as we knew.
And this was his first. So we don't know whether it was what shot he took.
I don't know which one he took.
But did they give a reason why they wouldn't do an autopsy?
Because he was married and because those decisions were made at a different family level
Right.
than mine, I couldn't speak to those issues.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, it's very sad, and we're very sorry that happened. Now, you want to talk to us about something else. What else did you want to talk to us about?
This isn't secondhand; it's firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that it was important to bring out. When COVID first came out, they were attributing a lot of deaths to COVID. There was a tragic house fire. Our next door neighbor, who we were close to, their house caught on fire. We went over there to try to get them out. We called the authorities. So I was close to the family because we've been neighbors with them for a long time, and the authorities told their sons that if they would allow them to list it as a COVID death, they would get them, I believe it was like $3,000 a piece towards their funeral expenses. This, quite frankly, infuriated me because it had nothing to do with COVID. And if it's happening in a small town like ours, Lyons, New York, it's got to be happen nationally. And so I just think that it's important to bring out those kinds of issues.
Let me just see if I've got this right. So your neighbors have a house fire
Yes,
and people died.
and both of them that were in the house died, the mother and the father.
And the authorities, do you mean the police when you say the authorities?
You know, I can't tell you exactly who it was that told that
Right.
to them, but I know that they were told that, and they said, "There's no way we do that." In my conversation,
And they were told if we could list those two people that died in a house fire as a COVID death, they would get around $3,000 or whatever amount of money each.
that's what I was told by the sons.
That's extremely disturbing.
It was and is extremely disturbing to me because how many people really died from COVID and how many people were attributed to COVID from totally different reasons.
And how many people are in on the deception is also worrying. Whoever the authorities are.
I don't know.
No.
It shocked me that in a small town we'd even have something like that happen.
Well, thank you so much for telling us. This is really important that we learn these things from your experience, and for you it's firsthand with the son. So we really appreciate that, and we're so sorry about your stepbrother.
Well, thank you.
Sign his name on the bus.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Autism destroys families, but more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues DHC has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today, we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members, from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes
from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.
I'm Claire Dooley, you're watching CHG TV, and this is the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. As extreme weather grows more frequent, questions grow about what's natural and what's not. From manipulated moisture flows to temperature swings, we explore the science behind engineered weather patterns. Could these interventions be amplifying the very crisis we've been warned about? Our expert Dane unpacks the role of ionosphere heaters and cloud seeding in today's climate chaos.
The US military was so effective at controlling precipitation in the 60s in the Vietnam War that international community passed treaties forbidding weather modification in wartime, not over their own populations, only for wartime purposes. Not that anybody pays attention to those treaties anyway, but in the 70s they passed the INMOD treaties because these precipitation manipulation programs were so effective. Do we think they're not exponentially more advanced now? If they didn't want it to flood there, it would not flood. If they didn't want the rain to stop over the Palisades in California for almost an entire year, they shut the rain off for almost an entire year. There is zero question. We can speculate on the various agendas and objectives being carried out, but the fact that climate engineering operations is absolutely inseparable from the devastating drought or deadly deluge scenarios is inarguable. It's absolutely inarguable, and we have a criminal climate science community that's pretending this is all, quote, Mother Nature, and they throw that term out a lot, Polly. Mother Nature this, Mother Nature that. I saw Al Roker from the Weather Channel show a grid pattern sky and say, isn't Mother Nature miraculous? What? Do we live in an insane asylum? I mean, it's mind-numbing. People need to wake up, use their sense of reason, and face the oncoming train because it's about to hit.
Now let's talk about tornadoes for a bit. Tornadoes outbreaks dramatically accelerate in 2025.
Because they don't have the resources to chemically cool, in most cases, the entire coast-to-coast lower 48, what we see is this flip-flopping pattern. They'll direct all resources to the western half of the country, so we have far below normal temperatures on the western end of the U.S., the western half, with far above on the eastern half, and then it will flip. And they describe this like it's something normal. There's nothing normal about it. And the reason is because they, in the course of directing moisture flows, they use covert weapons of mass destruction like ionosphere heaters. HARP is one in Alaska. That's a weapon of mass destruction. So they can heat the ionosphere by transmitting 3.6 million watts of power, which causes an electrical chain reaction and superheats that layer of the atmosphere, pushing the atmosphere up and down. The downward push is a high-pressure heat dome, which spins the upper-level currents clockwise in the northern hemisphere, and they can direct the moisture flows in doing so. But below that high-pressure heat dome, a term we hear all the time now, temperatures go through the roof. So we see this back and forth flip-flopping of temperatures. So what happens when they're migrating moisture in from the west, chemically nucleating that moisture? I stress that term. You can search the Engineering Winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Patented processes of chemical ice nucleation, cloud seeding, which creates a cold, dense, chemically induced layer at the surface. So they're chemically cooling this moisture from the west and then colliding that with manipulated moisture flows out of the record warm Gulf of Mexico that are migrating north. And in that collision zone, you have unstable atmospheric conditions, which spawns what? Cyclonic rotations, aka tornadoes. So again, it's not about producing a specific tornado in a specific location that can't be proved, but the conditions that are necessary to create the spawning ground for these cyclonic rotations are absolutely inseparable from climate engineering, period.
We love hearing from our viewers at CHG TV, so please reach out to us with any questions, any comments, or if there's anybody in this field that you would like to hear more from, please let us know, plug some experts and we'll try to get them on. Please reach out to us at goodmorning@CHGTV. Thanks so much for watching the Geoengineering Report. We'll see you next time on CHGTV.